All right, well, this is going to be the slightly less drunk tech show of the week. While you were streaming, Wendell, Barnacles and Jay, they just made a fool out of themselves and the entire tech community.
Wait. Am I drunk? Yes, you are.
And I am so ashamed for all of us in the tech community. Jay was rolling around on the floor. Barnacles was practically half sober. So this is going to be the sober show for the week.
I like the part where Captain Picard blows up the Death Star.
It's 1980 all over again.
That phone number in the background, whoever's phone number that is, they're going to get 1 million phone calls, and we don't know anything about it, and we don't want to know anything about it. So yeah. Anyway, we've got a lot of stuff going on.
BBS, but I'm sure that it's not still a BBS, sadly.
It might be. I don't know. Anyway, guys, be sure to subscribe to all of our different channels. We've uploaded to almost every channel this week. It's been a good week, and we've uploaded lots of stuff to the hardware channel, a couple things to the regular channel, and even stuff to the How to Live channel. So, yeah, the Linux channel as well. So on the hardware channel, you've been doing lots of Skylake stuff.
Yeah, Skylake is out. We've got our main Skylake overview that's on the main channel, but then we've got specific Skylake hardware on the hardware channel. So be sure and subscribe to get the full fire hose of everything. We've also got a couple of build videos that are coming up. We're going to have those on the main channel because everybody seems to like the build videos, but we always get a lot of thumbs down on just the unboxings because it's like, oh, it's just an ordinary unboxing. No, we want to see you like turn it into Bender from Futurama, and it's like, well, it takes a lot of effort, guys. I mean, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, really. I'm still pretty much mentally in Switzerland. That place was amazing. And I want to go ahead and say thanks to all of our different members who came out and met us in Belgium and Germany. We actually met some people in Liechtenstein. So even there, we got out of the car and there was some, a group of people that they were like, what the hell are you doing here? So, and then of course, Switzerland, we met a bunch of people there. So hello to everybody who came out to the meetups. That really made the trip completely worth it. You guys are awesome. And I really want to go back now. One thing I like about Europe is everything is close together. So whenever we would have a meetup, we had a pretty good turnout, 15, 20 people. In Germany, we had over 20 people at the different meetups and in a few different Munich and also in Cologne. So what's up, everybody? Hope you guys enjoyed the coverage. And we have a lot more coming as far as CERN and also just a general European video. But that'll be after the Chinese stuff that I've been editing for the last 3 days. All right. Let's get down to business with the tech news this week. Baboom launched. That's a new music platform. And it's, if you guys like music platforms, this one was kind of a Kim.com's project, although he's no longer, it's not even on the screen, the wrong thing's on the screen. He's no longer with the company, but a lot of the ideals that he had as far as, you being in control of your own destiny, as it were, that's all on there. I did upload the stuff from Zweihander. It's there. So if you guys want to check that out, the internet's running really slow right now, which is kind of weird. But yeah, really slow. Wow. I feel like I'm on Wi-Fi, but there is no Wi-Fi. I'm on wired. But yeah. But anyway, yeah, you guys can go check that out.
Comcast.
And yeah, really. There it is. Baboom.com/Zweihander, and that'll bring you to our artist page to give you a good idea of just how it's all set up. Anyway, let's talk about the Google stuff that's happened this week. Lightning strike, destroyed data center. Well, it didn't destroy a data center, but 4 lightning strikes in a row. Like, how unlucky can you be? And they say that lightning doesn't strike twice in the same spot. Well, that's BS. Lightning strikes because it likes that spot. It's like, where should I strike? This spot is really nice. I'm going to strike right here. And it strikes that spot over and over again. That's the way it usually happens. So if you get struck by lightning, it's not safe to just sit there. You want to get the hell out of there because lightning was attracted to that point. Yeah. Anyway, 4 times data loss. It's kind of a new thing for Google. You don't hear about this often with Google, we heard about it last year with Amazon, a massive outage, but they had an outage for several days, and now they're strengthening and all that sort of thing. But yeah, just freaky. I don't even know if there's any news here other than the fact that it's a crazy headline. Why have I keep putting the wrong thing on the screen? I must be out of it. There we go.
It was permanent storage in the European West 1B data center. So data that was in the cloud for this period of time was basically inaccessible. Some customers' data in this region was inaccessible for 4 days, and some recently written data was lost completely. And so Google has sort of taken responsibility for that and has promised to beef up their algorithms to better handle redundancy and replication.
All right, let's check out this new stuff that MasterCard's doing. This is pretty interesting. They're allowing you to pay with your face now. So MasterCard, Visa, those companies are out there working on ways to compete with cash, because most people in the world and in the universe, they still use cash. You'd think like in a lot of countries it's mostly credit card, but most places still cash. So they're trying to think of new ways. What's that playing? They're trying to think of new ways to, make cash go away and allowing you to pay with your face. Maybe that's going to be an easy way to do it. So I guess the general idea is you can use your phone or maybe a terminal somewhere, wherever you go. You look at it, it identifies you, and that grants access to your bank or wherever your money is, your credit card. And then, it pings the server and says, hey, look at this guy's face. How much is he worth? And then it gives you access to whatever you have. And then you blink. You have to blink because that's how they can tell it's not like a false version of you. Now, what's going to stop people from... Here's what I can already see happening. And let's go ahead and get our tinfoil hats, even though it's not really that tinfoil hat. You go somewhere and there's, like you go to a restaurant or something. And you know how now they walk around with iPads, and mostly iPads, not Android devices. And they're like, all right, sir, you tap the screen and it's like, how much tip do you want to give? And you tap that, and then you sign with your finger and it's like, thank you, enjoy your latte. And what if that changes and now it's like, okay, sir, blink at the screen. What if they do that and they're capturing a video of you blinking so they can give it to their friends, Thug McThug, and they can go and play the video of you blinking to another MasterCard terminal? What if? That's pretty smart. We should do this.
I think something even more low tech than that would probably work, because if it's, a typical super cheap CMOS camera that's doing this, just get a picture of you and cut out the eyes, and then, put it on your face and then hold it up, and then you can blink all you want because it'll still be your eyes, but somebody else's face. That will fool the face recognition. The Microsoft demoed like a log in with your face thing a few years ago, and it had a similar feature, and that totally worked. You could totally print out a picture of your face and just cut out the eyes, and it was like, it seems legit. It's like, nicely done.
Well,
whatever.
Hold on a minute. Weren't they like? Aren't they looking at your eyes as well? I figured the eye would be one of the most telling things, because your face over time and over the years is going to change. If you smoke a lot of cigarettes and if you party too hard, your face is going to droop, man. So, from the years 30 to 35, you could be a totally different person, especially if you've partied too hard. So
if
I figured the eyes stay the same.
Camera, then no.
Really?
But if it's like a 10 megapixel front-facing camera, okay. But if it's like the low resolution front-facing camera, I just don't think it's going to have the pixels.
Oh man, this is a new ways to exploit invented by MasterCard. Those guys are innovators out there. Could be interesting. All right, so let's talk about these roads that charge as you drive. So in London, they are working on these electric recharging lanes, and the idea is that they may be able to put these on the road. And they're already trying to beef up efforts to cut down on emissions and that sort of thing. I've even heard rumors that they might do something to limit the sale of diesel engines, even though I don't think that diesel engines are as dirty as people think they are. But that's beside the point. They can do whatever they want in Britland. Anyway, right now they're testing out these roadways, and they're throwing about 500 million pounds at this. And over the next 5 years, they're going to test out these lanes that basically charge the car as you drive. Just driving down the road, charging your car. I wonder if that's going to heat up the bottom of your car.
It's like F-Zero.
Yeah, pretty much like F-Zero. If they can figure out how to make it repair, okay, that's the next step. Is once we get the organic building materials, we could have it set up so that you get in a fender bender, you drive in this lane for a little while, and it fixes up your car, it fixes up the body damage and all that sort of thing. That'll be 27 years in the future. This is going to be about 5-6 years in the future.
They certainly got the icon right for the F-Zero thing.
Now we just need the little thing to come and fly on top of you and like charge you up. But How did that thing get there so fast? Every time you're in F-Zero, I'm like, man, that thing's swooped in. I guess it's that far in the future. It doesn't matter. We're having giant races across cities. Why am I even bringing this up? I don't know. All right.
It's so fast because turns out that sprite was just out of frame.
Just waiting right there. Good programmers. Yeah. All right. What's next on the menu right now? So that's what they're doing in Britland. I'm just going to call it that to bother you guys. And by the way, everyone in the UK, aluminum. All right. In India, they're building the world's first 100% solar-powered airport. And here's the deal. 45 acres, 46,150 panels. That's quite a lot. But it's going to cut down on quite a lot of emissions. About 300,000 tons worth of carbon. And it's the equivalent of driving 750 million miles. So that's what it's going to cut down. It's pretty cool. They're also going to be selling some power back to the grid whenever they don't use it, but an entire airport, that's how many solar panels it takes. I mean, solar panels are efficient, but you got to have a lot of panels. I mean, if you have a really powerful computer, you're going to need like one panel just for that really powerful computer. So 46,000 panels for an airport. That's going to be difficult in some places that don't have a lot of room, like, not a lot of room in the UK. Maybe they could do it in Wales somewhere, 45 acres. They just pipe it in from Wales, or where else is crowded? Like Hong Kong, for instance, is very crowded. I'm not sure where they would be able to put 45 acres worth of solar paneling, but I don't know. There's other alternative forms of energy, but for any airport that has the room, this may be an interesting investment and a way to cut down on emissions and that sort of thing. Kind of cool what they're doing there. That's an ugly photo. It was
interesting. The article mentioned that India already had 4 gigawatts of solar capacity. That's a pretty good amount of solar capacity given the region's electrical needs.
All right, so we have mouse pads now, and I should release the video on this. I've been working on tons of videos. There's over 600 clips from the China trip that I'm trying to put into 3 different videos, and that's what I've been doing this week. Anyway, while we were there, we went and checked out some different factories that make mouse pads. And we found one that I thought was pretty good. Real rubber. It didn't smell funny. And they also have a new product that's microfiber. So you can actually use these mouse pads to clean your glasses. And we decided to get them in 2 different sizes. One that's a bit wider and one that's a bit more of a traditional size. So you guys can pick the size you like. Rubber on the back. And we did 2 millimeters thick. And we did braided edges. Because sometimes the ones that are really thin, sometimes they start to curl a little bit, but with the braided edges, they're going to be way less likely to curl or fray on the edges. So, we go all out when it comes to quality. That's just what we do. And one thing that's interesting is when we went in there, I was like, these guys make Razer products and SteelSeries products. They were actually making SteelSeries products while we were there. I went in the back and they're like, damn, they're making them right now. So they are decent enough for some of the biggest brands, and I thought they were doing a decent job. So, yeah, made in Shenzhen. Straight to you guys. Enjoy those. And shirt of the month, we've only got a couple weeks left on this. I think this is my favorite shirt of the month. I'm not sure, but it may be my favorite shirt of the month. I like the I don't know. I like this artwork. It's done by a Whiskey Ranger who has done a bunch of our shirts. Anyway, so check that out on the store, and remember that's the best way that you guys can say thanks to us, because with ad block and everything else, Google ain't paying the bills at all. So thanks very much for that, and hopefully we're making stuff that you guys enjoy, so it's a mutually beneficial situation. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the Hyperloop from Elon Musk. And apparently, this is actually starting to get into motion. That was a pun, I think, but it didn't supposed to be a pun. Anyway, yeah, the Hyperloop.
Well, allow us to loop you in on the Hyperloop.
Oh,
that's
God.
what the show's about, right?
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, they're starting plans for about 5 miles worth of Hyperloop. You won't be able to go up to full speed, but yeah, they got a few. They have a few companies involved, and one of the things that's kind of interesting here, they've got a lot of different people involved from a lot of different companies like NASA and Boeing and SpaceX and that sort of thing. And what they're doing with the people who are working on the Hyperloop, who are, the engineers who are doing the math and working on this stuff, instead of paying them right now, they are giving them stock in the company. So Normally, you see this kind of thing in like Craigslist, and it's like, hey, New York firm, we're making a big thing, and it's going to be awesome. It's our dream. It's our vision. And guess what? If you work for us for free, we're going to give you credit and eventually potential money. So I don't think it's like that. I think it's a bit different because this actually could be huge, and it's Elon Musk who has a track record of making things that not always make money but are good for humanity. So, yeah. I don't know. I think I would do it if I was... Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, it might seem a little fantastical, but I'm really not sure about, the staffing on this. They've got 400 engineers that are working on this, and clearly those people know what they were doing. But one of the most striking quotes from one of those engineers in this article is, I don't think the construction hurdles are significant compared to other technologies that are already out there, says Carl Brockmeyer, Orlikon,
whatever his name is,
head of business. Well, that's the name of the company. They're head of business development.
Yeah.
From a technical point of view, it's not a challenge. We're used to much higher and harsher applications. So literally, the dude is talking about creating a 5-mile long tube that is a vacuum, pumping all of the air out and having stuff in that. And these engineers are saying that's not really that much of an engineering challenge. Granted, I'm not a structural engineer, but it seems like that would actually be a significant engineering challenge. But they're saying, compared to the other stuff that we're doing, it's not really a big deal. So it's like, all right.
What else are these guys? Yeah, what else are these guys working on if that's easy? So I don't even know. Maybe they're building that ridiculous elevator to the moon or whatever that everyone keeps talking about. We'll talk about that later. But one phrase, space debris. Anyway, Samsung, they want to blanket the entire planet using 4,600 satellites. So how do you feel about Samsung being your global ISP? This could get interesting. So yeah, they basically want to blanket the entire globe. 1 zettabyte. That's 1 trillion gigabits gigabytes worth of data. Interesting. Do you think 4,600 satellites will work for the entire world? We got billions of people down here. I mean, if it's enough bandwidth, but the ping is going to be a bit rough. But once you get connected, I guess it's something to fill in the blanks. Maybe, I don't know.
The deal with these is that they're not going to be geosynchronous satellites, which means that their orbit is much, much closer. And so with the very close Earth orbit, you'll actually have a much lower ping time. The geosynchronous, unless the data that you're trying to get at is located in space on the satellite, the ping times that you're talking about are on the order of half a second. But with these satellites, where they're not in a geosynchronous orbit, they're moving very rapidly overhead. But if it's basically a geodesic dome of satellites, then the ping times start to be much more reasonable. It's still probably not as good as fiber optics, terrestrial fiber optics, but it's close. It's actually really close. So if you have that and you have the bandwidth to have a gazillion endpoints, whatever that protocol is, whatever that frequency is, then it could actually work. But I have a feeling that the satellite, like the first 2 or 3 generations of this, are going to be like first generation DSL levels of speed, which will be okay for bringing internet to like the third world. And it probably would be okay for mobile communications applications, voice applications, sort of low fidelity web, but it's not going to be high bandwidth, I don't think.
You know what? I think all this can kind of lead into the next thing, because we're talking about the internet, and there's been a couple articles this week that have come out. They're opinion pieces, but let's bring one up on the screen here. The Internet of Things is a bad idea, and both of this is an opinion piece, and here's one on the New York Times. Why smart objects may be a dumb idea. So, they've got a point here, and I think we should all talk about this. I want to hear what you guys have to say in the comments on the website as well. But they're saying that the problems that we're going to run into with having everything being connected, from your watch to your shoes to your refrigerator to your stove to your car, is that things are going to be, the software is going to have to be so complex that there's probably going to be errors. And the errors are mostly going to come from the users who made the software, because, they have to be smarter than the software that they're making in the first place. So, and also, the more things that are connected, the more chances that we have of something screwing up, or something being vulnerable, or something being hacked, or something going wrong and crashing. And while Kane and I were in Europe, we rented a BMW 5 Series. We actually rented a 1 Series. We weren't trying to be opulent or anything like that. We were trying to be practical, but they didn't have any in stock, so they gave us a 5 Series for the same price. It was diesel, and it was decently practical as far as gas mileage and that sort of thing, but it was completely computerized to the point where if someone in front of me cut me off, the car would slow down automatically. It was like, I just took my hands off the car a few times. I was like, hey, Kane, watch this. And I would get behind someone that was going very slow and just, take cross my legs, and he'd be like, what are you doing? And the car would automatically slow down. And the same systems are controlling so many different things in the car. So that car has some really complicated software going, sensors and all kinds of things going on all the time. At some point I was like, you know what? I'm starting to rely on this a bit too much, number one. And number two, what happens if one piece of this goes wrong while I'm expecting to rely upon it? And also, how vulnerable is this going to be to outside hackers? Is the radio connected to the throttle like it is on some cars? So there's a lot to really talk about here. I don't know. Do you think we're getting into some dangerous territory here with everything being connected, Wendell?
It's really interesting if you look at some of the sort of incidents that have happened. So there are certain brands of smart refrigerator, like people have put. I like this story because it's really funny, because you think refrigerator, this is crazy. But there are some brands that have made refrigerators with built-in LCD screens that will help you, with your grocery list and some other things, and it'll help you find recipes. And it's like, all right, cool, kitchen technology. We've been trying to do the kitchen of the future since the 1940s. And if you don't believe me, you should check out archive.org, because there's some really amazing footage of the kitchen of the future where there's like a kitchen computer, somebody like in a punch card, and the kitchen's like trying to figure out what to cook. And so that was kind of, it's not really the Internet of Things, but that was kind of the computerization of the kitchen. But what happened was that this particular fridge came with Chinese malware on it. And so it was basically, the fridge was trying to hack into the wireless around it and deposit malware or impersonate, pre-existing wireless access points. And it's like, wow, really? The fridge has malware on it out of the box? That's kind of insane and interesting and weird. Is this some sort of espionage operation gone wrong? Or is this just really bad quality? Or is it like the LG TVs, which, the smart TVs, which are listening to all of the stuff that you say all of the time, and you can't really opt out? And, that's actually a thing that actually happened. And so, yeah, the Internet of Things is not designed to have people be involved. People sort of become the commodity. People are the product. This is why open source and being cognizant of how these things are put together and working against you is sort of really important. There's not really any consumer protection for this kind of thing. Everybody's like, oh, let's do free market with this, that, and the other. But the reality is that the more that these things exist, sort of the deeper that they hook into your existence. And it's probably not a bad thing. Probably somebody somewhere is exploiting that for profit. It's just the nature of civilization right now, which is unfortunately very bad. And in the case of, I think, the Chinese malware, it's just the really blatant, they learned that level of capitalism from America, let's say. And so I think this is sort of an interesting situation that we're in, where, it's like Richard Stallman said, you don't own your hardware. The hardware that you bought is not really yours, because the software is not working for you. Now, sure, you might get some benefits out of the software, but the fact that you can't really audit what the software is doing and make sure that it's secure and make sure that it stays secure, there's not really a mechanism for updates. There's not really a mechanism to patch the security issues. Like if somebody breaks the window out of your car, it is visually apparent to you that, oh crap, somebody broke the window on my car, I need to get the window replaced. If somebody breaks into the computer on your car, you don't know. It's like, you don't really know that your computer has been compromised in your car. You're not really aware of it. How would you know? The tools and the mechanisms and things like that to do that don't really exist. It's kind of like when we first had electricity. A lot of people got electrocuted because it was like, we just run some bare copper wires on some posts away from one another, it'll be completely fine. And now we have the National Electric Code, which theoretically prevents everybody from being electrocuted. We don't have that for computers.
All right, let's check out Squarespace. We've built our website with Squarespace. It's been incredibly easy. And the thing I like about Squarespace is the fact that it just puts the content forward and gets out of the way. There's not a lot of bubbly nonsense anywhere. Plenty of templates to choose from, and I know a lot of you guys want total control. There is Get Access. Just take a look at a couple of the different features here. There's the new cover pages. If you just need something, as a splash page or one page, you can use it for that, or you can use it as a cover page for your store or whatever. Really good for musicians. It allows you to integrate Bandcamp, or you can sell your stuff right on here, SoundCloud, whatever you want. It's just a clean, easy to design, website. About $8 a month, depending on your plan and what you guys are doing. And we do have some discount codes for the Tech Syndicate members. Just go to their website and use the promo code Tech Syndicate. You can click on the screen and get there just the same. Now back to the regularly scheduled tech. Let's go right ahead and talk about Vince Cerf over at Google. He's their vice president. He's also one of the founding fathers of the internet. Not really exactly, but kind of. He invented a lot of the protocols that make the internet work right now. But anyway, he has a take on all this, and he's basically saying that, everything is going to be connected. Everything from cities to people, to cars, to essentially everything. That's he's predicting the future. I have to agree with him. That's where we're going. So he also says that we need some standard protocols. That may also be the case, but okay. So smart objects may not be a good idea. We've read the articles. It's gonna happen. That's just what's gonna happen. So we're gonna have to figure out how to make it work. That's the future I see. I mean, every company wants that. A lot of the people want it for, they want to trade a bit of their privacy for a little bit of convenience. We should do a Windows 10 commercial right now. That's just what's going to happen. I mean, that's the future. So figure it out. We don't have to sign up for it. At this point, I don't think. I mean, I don't have a smartwatch yet and don't have any wearables and don't have any plans to have any of those sort of things. But I guess there are some smart things that I could see myself using in the future.
As long as all of the Internet of Things of the future are running OpenBSD, which is probably one of the most secure distribution operating systems out there that is very easily verifiable and auditable, we'll be okay. But Linux, less okay, but still probably better. Windows embedded? Oh, hell no.
Well, see, the thing about Linux is if we're going to run Linux, it's going to have to be a smaller kernel, like a microkernel or something. I don't know. Right now, it's a bit too... I guess the latest versions of Linux, there's just too much stuff going on in the kernel. But that's probably why BSD is the secure choice. Depends on which one you do, right?
Package it.
Yeah.
The particular BSD I'm thinking of has been very, auditability and an audit of the code is part of their thing. So that's sort of part of their operational mantra. So
yeah. I'm going to just bring this up while I'm here. You and I haven't talked in a while. But while we were in Germany, I met a few people who absolutely hate Linux, liked Windows better than Linux, but were all about BSD. And I think they hate Linux just because it's the thing that most people recommend above Windows, and they get sick of hearing about it. So I'm not sure if most of their Linux hate was really founded in the right place. But at the same time, they kept preaching BSD. And the biggest problem with BSD is, there's after you get it installed, unless you're doing a certain thing, it's not the best for gaming or a lot of times general computing. It may be the most secure, it may have the smallest kernel, as far as the smaller than Linux at least. But I mean, what would make BSD? Maybe if maybe that project where the guy is trying to make the OS 10 binaries work on BSD, maybe then it would be relevant, but I don't know. Have you ever tried to game on BSD, Wendell?
No, BSD, it's not really... BSD's goals as an operating system are not really around that. BSD's... Yeah. And it's really hard to generalize BSD because there's FreeBSD and OpenBSD, and so there's a couple other flavors that I would be able to think of in a few minutes probably. FreeBSD is more like the pragmatic BSD. OpenBSD is more the security-oriented BSD, although there's another flavor of BSD that is even more security-oriented than that. But the operational goals are, we think this operating system can be the operational infrastructure of the internet, and they're not wrong. I mean, OpenBSD really, for a lot of the things that it does, really is a good choice for operational infrastructure of the internet, because it has to be so battle hardened, and because it has to be, so relatively few of security defects and things like that. Linus Torvalds this week also had some really insightful things to say about the future of Linux. It was in the context of, where do you see Linux in 10 years? And his response was, well, I don't really think about Linux in 10 years in the future. I really think about it about 6 months in the future, like the current version and the future version. And Linux is always going to have security problems because there's always going to be bugs. But he says that, the hope is that the design of Linux is always such that when there's a problem at one layer in Linux, the next layer would catch that security problem. So to have something that's really exploitable, a bug that can be used for really clever things, that the different layers, the way that the assembly happens, sort of naturally prevents those exploitable bugs from being useful. And he also talks about how some of the really sort of infamous bugs in Linux to do with security, or bugs that led to serious security problems, were people that were using really clever things in ways that nobody had really ever thought of before, in order to sort of trick the kernel into doing things. And he's basically right. There's not really been anything in the Linux kernel that is, he sort of described them as boneheaded mistakes. It's like, oh yeah, if somebody were trying to hit somebody else over the head with a frying pan, then I guess we probably would need to do this a little different. But we just never thought anybody would use this interface in such a crass, blunt instrument kind of a way.
I think one of the things that Linux kind of has going for it is the fact that it's not a major target because it only has a very small installation base. Once it gets bigger, maybe it'll be a bigger target, and then we'll have more to worry about. But yeah, there are vulnerabilities there. There's plenty of vulnerabilities in OS X, and there's plenty of vulnerabilities in Windows. So all of them are vulnerable. Windows is probably the most targeted because it has the largest installation base, and that's a big part of it. Regardless of how fast a hacker can break into something, which one does the hacker want to break into? Usually Windows. So that was an argument I threw at the guy who we were talking about. Yeah, that was one of the arguments I used when I was talking to the guy who was advocating BSD, and I agree with him. BSD would be the Jesus OS if it met everyone's needs, which it only has very specific needs which it can meet right now at this point. Anyway, all right. Police, they've arrested some guys in Denmark. And this is pretty freaky. They've arrested them for sharing information. So a couple of guys had Popcorn Time websites. And if you guys don't know what Popcorn Time is basically the illegal version of Netflix. It goes on to various nefarious search engines. Various nefarious, I like that. They should make a Disney movie called Various Nefarious about bad guys who decide to do something good for Christmas or some shit. Anyway. Yeah, they've Popcorn Time is you can explain it.
So Popcorn Time is a program that enables users to share among themselves movies. Popcorn Time does not really make any effort to determine whether or not those movies are legal, and the predominant use of Popcorn Time so far has been sharing copyrighted movies. The cool thing is the Popcorn Time can actually let you watch movies as they stream in. And so, not to understate the Streisand effect here, but these guys were running websites about Popcorn Time and where to get it. They were not actually sharing any movies or doing anything like that. They were just saying, hey, this Popcorn Time program lets you share movies with other people who want to share movies. And these people have been arrested for disseminating that information, which, at least in America, would be a really dangerous, slippery slope. Totally where we're headed, totally what's going to happen. I really don't want it to happen because that's a really bad precedent, and the whole slippery slope thing, thought crime.
Well, yeah.
It totally will lead to that. I mean, not the first day, obviously, but a year or two.
It's freaking ridiculous.
Now. Yeah, it totally will.
It's ridiculous to me anyway. Even if they're sharing information, but like the precedent would be that we could say something. And you just totally innocently say like, oh yeah, there's an exploit in Windows. And we said that, right? Some guy goes and hacks Windows. And then when he hacks Windows, he goes, oh yeah, I watched Tech Syndicate and they said that there was an exploit, so I did it. Next thing you know, we're going to jail for 27 years or some crap like that because we shared some information and someone acted and did something bad with the information that we shared. That's how messed up that is. God, I don't want to live in a society like that. What can we do to stop it?
I mean, it really comes down to, it's like popcorn time. If you Google that or you search for that, you don't have to Google it necessarily. You just search for it in general. That magic
Use
word
Alta Vista.
sort of opens up the gateway. Well, yeah, I mean, anything. But that magic word opens up the door in order for you to be able to use an illegal service. And it's like, are we gonna keep drawing the line in the sand until the point that that magic word is illegal? Because this kind of already happened with DVD playback. There is a certain prime number that when compiled, there's a certain prime number that when converted to binary, it produces an executable that is capable of decrypting DVDs. So this is really a fun one. There exists a prime number that is itself a program, when you execute the prime number as a program, that will decrypt DVDs. And so is that prime number illegal because of the DVD encryption, the whole DMCA, where you can't really decrypt, bypass a copyright protection mechanism, something like that, I think is the exact wording from the law. And so there exists this prime number that does exactly that, but it's a prime number. It's by definition, it's an entity. I mean, it's a prime number. So are we going to outlaw a prime number, or are we going to outlaw people telling other people that a prime number can be used in a certain way to decrypt a DVD? And it's not like a program that uses a prime number like encryption. No, I literally mean a prime number that can be executed as a program will decrypt DVDs. And so is that illegal? Because that's where we're going, and it's a really bad place to go.
All right, you want to talk about some hardware stuff? There's a lot of fun things to talk about when it comes to hardware, like FreeSync.
Ooh, yeah, let's talk about hardware. Oh, yeah, FreeSync.
You know something? G-Sync is I've been saying G-Sync is dead for like 3 years now. I've been saying G-Sync is dead before it even showed up because I knew this was going to happen.
It's funny. I'll share a story with you, and nothing happened. It makes me sad. But so yesterday, and I don't know, I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth because I can't stand the whole social thing, and it's just all ridiculous, and it's all it's not me. But I have a Twitter account, and I tweet somewhat regularly because it's kind of interesting. It's easy. I'm lazy. And so AMD Roy tweeted, and he's like, "Oh, this is amazing. Intel is going to support FreeSync. This is great, and we're going to talk about that." And that's all well and good. And so I very tongue-in-cheek said back to AMD Roy, "Hey, does Nvidia's support of mobile G-Sync in quotation marks count as also supporting FreeSync?" Bazing! And he did not favorite that or retweet that, or I wonder why. I mean, come on. I mean, why is that a thing? So.
Yeah, that's pretty much. Let me open this back up there on the screen. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But
so for those of you in the know,
so Nvidia's
that feature mobile G-Sync don't have a G-Sync card. They're using the FreeSync type technology.
Yeah, but Nvidia calls that adaptive VSync. That's the difference. They don't look at that as FreeSync, because FreeSync is a buzzword that they shall not utter. They shall only say things like adaptive VSync because that is the Visa standard, and you know what? They would be completely right in doing so. That's fine, Nvidia. You guys can say that. Completely okay to do so. Adaptive VSync it is, whatever. FreeSync has been adopted by the Visa standard, so as long as it's 1.2a, it can have VSync. I mean, or VSync. No, it can have FreeSync. So Intel is going to be supporting FreeSync on their future stuff. Now, their new, I guess the new GPU in the Skylake is pretty nice, right?
Well, it varies. So, like the 6700K is actually only the Intel HD 530. So we're not talking Iris Pro graphics or anything like that. But Skylake has a ton of SKUs or individual part numbers, and there are many other. This is sort of a first for Intel. Intel's had different SKUs, and Broadwell happened, and then there was kind of some Broadwell desktop parts, but not really because Broadwell just came out. But there were a lot of mobile Broadwell parts, and we saw some mobile Broadwell laptops, and power saving, and they had some really good graphics and that kind of thing. But the improvements this generation with Skylake, not the K parts, because Intel figures most people are not buying the K parts for the Intel Iris Pro graphics, and they would be correct in that. But there are desktop parts that are coming that have Iris Pro graphics. They're mainly meant for OEMs and desktop system builders, and those have a really good onboard GPU. In fact, some of the parts are going to have 128 megs of eDRAM embedded, which dramatically, it sort of caches stuff from main memory for the graphics. And that really sort of improves things. Like when we've done tests, it's like, oh, dual channel versus not dual channel. It's made a huge difference it's made a huge difference in terms of the graphics. The ASRock B-Box that we reviewed, that thing was dual channel, and going from single channel to dual channel, it's the size of a NUC. It's 4 inches on the side and 2 inches tall, give or take, a half a liter volume. That thing, going from single channel to dual channel, just because of the GPU component of it, made it so that it could play back 4K video at 30 hertz without stuttering, which otherwise wouldn't have been possible due to lack of video memory bandwidth. And so that's what's happening now with Skylake, is that they're doing some really fancy things, not in the K parts, but we're going to have some more stuff on that later. And actually, our Skylake overview video, which hopefully we'll remember to link in the description, is really good because I go into all of the nitty gritty with all of that. And so it's kind of interesting, really.
Let's talk about something else that's pretty interesting about this entire scenario of Intel moving over to FreeSync. Now, Intel, they happen to be the largest, they have the largest install base of graphics card in the world because, they have all the embedded solutions. A lot of offices use them, and then you'll see them in tons and tons of laptops and that sort of thing. But they've already been using sort of an adaptive VSync in a lot of laptops, depending on the model, to save battery life. But here's the deal. When it comes to gaming, so you have Intel and AMD now supporting FreeSync, the Visa standard and all that sort of thing. Nvidia's clinging on to their proprietary stuff, which is basically the same thing that's painted green, maybe with a little onboard buffer or something like that. But as we get better and better products and better graphics cards, we won't really need the onboard buffer. Maybe it'll help for some things like low FPS gaming, but really the bottom line here is that they're going to be holding onto their stuff. They're going to be trying to get other companies like Samsung and ASUS and that sort of thing to support it with their displays. But a lot of those companies are going to be like, listen, we've got a standard now. It's the future. We live in the future. And I'd say in 4 or 5 years from now, G-Sync, everyone's going to forget it. It's just going to be when you buy a monitor, it has this technology because it's good for a million different things. And that's going to be the end of it. That's what I think. So maybe 5 to 7 years, everything has FreeSync. It's just part of the standard. Whatever newfangled adapters they have or newfangled plugs, DisplayPort 7 or whatever, that's a bit fast. It'll be like 3.4 or something. I don't know. It's all just going to be there, and it'll be at almost any frequency instead of just being like right now. Most of the FreeSync monitors are like between 45 and 60 hertz only, which is kind of annoying, but
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that the G-Sync has a lot more flexibility right now, owing to the fact that you've got something sort of sitting on or between the link between the graphics card and the display. So yeah, if you drop below 45 frames per second, it's basically fine. But the panel behind me, which we have not reviewed yet, but we will, it's a Wasabi Mango. PC Perspective actually has a pretty good review on it, where there's a firmware upgrade for it that will make it FreeSync. This is a slightly newer version that is FreeSync out of the box. It is overclockable, so it's 4K monitor. You can run it at 120 hertz at 1080p if you overclock it, and that works fine. Or you can run it at FreeSync 4K. Now, I've tested down to 45 frames per second because that's how low the AMD demo goes. I haven't figured out a good something to actually test and confirm FreeSync below 45 frames per second, but the little AMD software download thing on like the ASUS web storage website, goes from 45 to 50 to 55 to 60 FPS, and sweeping through FreeSync on this works great at 4K. So what we need to do now is, if there's any volunteers in the audience, what we need to do now is modify the desktop Nvidia drivers to make it think that this is an embedded DisplayPort panel, probably finagling around with the EDID, probably some other stuff, some other kinds of shenanigans. But I guarantee you, if the Nvidia driver thinks this is in a laptop and thinks this is an EDP, embedded DisplayPort display, it's totally going to enable mobile G-Sync. Just about.
And you wonder why it's hard for us to get graphics card samples. Anyway, that monitor looks pretty interesting there. That's the Wasabi Mango, a great monitor, terrible flavor of sorbet. So speaking of FreeSync, we have a 27-inch, 144 hertz FreeSync gaming monitor here from ASUS. This one could be pretty interesting, especially if it more fully utilizes the FreeSync standard, because FreeSync, it the standard does not dictate that it is only between 40 and 60, hertz or whatever. The standard is a lot broader than that. So if they have a better implementation, which it looks like they do here, we could have a very interesting monitor that rivals some of the G-Sync monitors out there. And this will also work with some of the future Intel stuff. So I don't think anybody...
Is that the ROG Swift?
Yeah, it looks like the Swift, yeah. I'm not sure if they actually call it the Swift here. I'm on the ROG website right now. It's just the MG27 8Q, and there's also a 9Q, but this one's the FreeSync 27-inch 1440p. And it's going to be a
even
nice
though this is an LG
monitor.
IPS panel, the latency is about 25 milliseconds, between
that's
25
rough.
and 30 milliseconds, I think. Well, one frame is 16 milliseconds at 60 hertz, and then we've got about a little more than 10 milliseconds overhead for the scalar board. It's got a scalar board inside it.
Right.
So it's one frame behind for processing, plus 10 milliseconds overhead for the scalar. So it's
That's
not horrible.
rough.
It's still better than the Samsung U28D 590D. But it is an IPS panel, and so the IPS response time is this honestly even though it's IPS, it reminds me of like first gen IPS, because first gen IPS was sort of noticeably slow, but like the crossover and the LG IPS 1440p displays, like we've seen in the recent Korean monitors, those have a very, very improved response time, and the IPS process in this panel is a little different. This is also a BGR pixel layout, so that's a little different as well.
I think I might stick with the just the A399U that we have talked about a lot, because that one is actually pretty good for gaming. I like it quite a bit. That response time seems
it's cheaper,
pretty high.
The blacks are blacker, and it's 4K is where it's at. And if you can push 60 FPS or VSync, I mean that monitor will do less than 60 FPS, but if you do enable VSync and do hopefully you don't have to go down to 30 hertz, but VSync makes it fine.
Yep, I quite enjoy this monitor. It's only $535. I didn't realize it was. I think I bought mine for like $599. I forget. I don't even remember what I got it for. But anyway, the ASUS is 1 millisecond gray to gray, so it'll probably be like 4 or 5 seconds totally. Milliseconds as far as the response time goes. Anyway, I don't really think there's much else to talk about as far as hardware goes, other than the stuff that you guys are going to see on the hardware channel coming up shortly. So let's move on to, this is kind of an interesting, I think I'm going to do this one first, if it would work. So supermassive black hole observation. They're using the helium-filled hard drives from HGST. I think it's interesting that's a great sales pitch for HGST. It's like, even NASA uses our hard drives, or, even the scientists looking for black holes. Here's the thing. The reason that they're doing this is because once you get to a certain altitude, hard drives, they don't work so well. The heads lock up. The density of air is just totally different up there. So helium really helps them function normally at higher altitudes. And the telescope that they're using for this in particular is in Mexico, and it's at 15,500 feet, so 4,000 something meters, almost 4,500, close to 5,000 something meters. I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head. But yeah. And, it says right here, Dell doesn't even certify their hard drives for operation above 10,000 feet. So yeah, if you live in Leadville, Colorado, and your hard drives keep dying, you should get the helium hard drives from HGST. I just sold one to every single person in Leadville. There we go.
We should get the commission on that.
Yeah.
It's really interesting the way that, if you're not familiar, it's the Bernoulli effect. The Bernoulli effect causes the read-write heads on hard drive to float a few molecules of air above the platters. So the read-write head does not actually contact the platters when the disks are in motion. And when there's no air, surprise, surprise, the Bernoulli effect is different. These drives being sealed, filled with helium, Bernoulli effect is intact because the drives are sealed.
There's an IBM article here that it's, we're going to get into some artificial intelligence if this thing would ever open. So check this out. IBM says that they built a digital rat brain. And they've been working on this for a few years now. The idea is to build a computer that's brain-inspired. And so they've done it. They've created something with 48 million digital neurons. I mean, a human brain has something like 600 billion. So this is a very small brain, but the application for something like this is pretty interesting, because right now the computers that we have are very good at like number crunching and that sort of thing, but they're not so good at identifying objects, reasoning, doing things like a standard brain can do. So they're saying that this, in conjunction with a standard computer model, may give them something that feels way more organic, and it'll also be better as far as having something like this in your cell phone. It'll be better for like, being able to converse with your cell phone and being like, hey, phone dude, could you do, it's always a girl actually, so hey, phone lady or voice lady, could you do something for me? And then she'll be able to figure out what you're saying. If it's not, right now we need specific terms like, hello Siri, do this exact thing, and you have keywords and it reacts that way. So this could create something a bit more dynamic, which would be interesting. But their goal is to build something that's about the power of a human brain fitted into a shoebox. That's going to take a few years still. But yeah, actually no, they just want 10 billion synapses. The human brain, now that I'm reading, 100 trillion synapses. So yeah, they're a few years away from a human brain, at least according to their research. Something's going on in Russia though. And Russia, this article is really skimpy on the details here on the Science, Technology, Futurism Ideas thing. It's 33rdsquare.com. Anyway, they say that they have an artificial intelligence breakthrough, and they have there's no details here. What have they created? They're trying to make something that's like a human brain, but there's like no real details in this article. And I took a look at this, but it's all in Russian. So if someone here can read this, I guess I could use Google Translate, but even that's kind of spotty. I want to know what the hell these guys are up to. And they say that they've created something that even reacts like a human. They say that if it looks and it's everything is too bright, it averts itself. It like looks away until it's dim, or it makes no sense to me. Like, it's reacting like a human. They say that it's doing things like that, but I can't read anything on this website. So what does this article mean?
They've created an artificial Putin.
I have no Putin puns. So yeah, last time I did, you guys were quick to be putting me into place.
I think Putin's on the blitz.
So yeah, I don't know what they've discovered, but what if it's
Putin on the blitz?
Oh, show's over. Everybody go home. I'm already at home. What do I do now? Where do I go? I don't know. My life is weird. Where do I go? Go sit in the car until it cools off in here? Yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and skip on to the next thing. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. So if you're thinking about solar panels, just Google Project Sunroof. It's pretty interesting. But basically, they're using data from Google Earth to determine whether or not your roof is a prime candidate, or just how much sun you're going to get, how good it's going to be for you. So, yeah, kind of cool.
I have to admit, this is about a 9.5 on the cleverness scale, because they're not using like thermal or infrared imaging for this. They're using their satellite photos, and they've written an algorithm that can basically detect building shadows, I think, and then based on where the building shadows are, they sort of compute where the sun is falling on the roofs. I mean, I'm sure they're using brightness and comparative imagery and taking pictures from different angles and sort of looking at it.
Also cloud data.
Yeah. But yeah, and cloud data. And this is processing a lot of information algorithmically. This is what big data is all about. This right here. This is a perfect big data application, and they haven't rolled it out everywhere. They've only rolled it out to 3 cities. But Google did a really nice video on this, and you guys should all check out that video because it's really short, sweet, and to the point about what they've done with this. But this is really cool. If you're thinking about installing solar on your roof, you can use Google's satellite data, because Google's apparently been gathering years worth of electric information on your house. Yeah, not creepy at all, right? In order to determine if a solar energy would be a good fit for you. So
let me go ahead and I'm going to take 1 second right now.
I want to go and paint my roof with like the
voltaic paint.
Go ahead.
Solar voltaic paint. Or
carbon nanotubes. I want carbon nanotube paint so that I have like the super black, and I want to see what that does to the algorithm. Google's just like, oh, there's a hole here. And it's like, nope, that's my house. It's the carbon nanotube super black paint.
Guys, I want to apologize really quickly for the stuttering. We're having some terrible internet stuff right now. So yeah, I'm paying for 100 down and I ain't getting it right now. Every time I click on anything, it makes Windows stutter and yeah, I have no idea. So yeah, it's just choppy today.
This literally is Retro Friday because we've got all the retro equipment and we've also got retro bandwidth.
Thanks, Comcast. Let's check out this 3D printed glass. This is really ridiculous. So MIT, man, those guys are insane. Anyway, right here it is. Look at that glass extruder. So they're taking the sand and all the other chemicals and stuff and getting it up to 19,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Why the hell are we using Fahrenheit? This is science. God, why?
It's MIT. They're using Fahrenheit. What is this? Harrison.
I think it's just freaking.
This journalist
I think
should be fired.
It's the Pop Sci website. I'm gonna pop them in the eye. Pop Sci. There's a joke in there somewhere, and it's fucking hilarious. But yeah, printing glass. This is really pretty to watch. And when you print glass, you can print it in all sorts of different patterns and that sort of thing. Oh, let's play this beautiful
This is not
video.
really the first time we've seen 3D printed glass, but it is kind of interesting because apparently they've worked on the algorithms for depositing glass. So like with regular 3D printing, you know, you deposit a bead and you do the layer, but their new setup can also drizzle the glass, which is which produces sort of an interesting aesthetic and an interesting sort of material effect.
Dale Chalui is totally out of business. This just in. Dale Chalui is out of business. MIT has all of his business for doing all of his glass sculptures. All right, so this is kind of a funny article right here. NASA, this is we're moving on to some more space stuff. NASA, they're scouring their old space shuttles to get some parts to send up to the space station. And this is funny because, you know, most of their stuff has been decommissioned and they're sitting in different museums in different places. And they've been going through into the museums and picking the parts out of there. Number one, this tells me that NASA is massively underfunded. And it's kind of sad that they're going and picking through things that are in a museum. But number two, it tells me that the stuff there is probably pretty good. And they're like, you know what? Nobody really needs to look at all this stuff. We can go pick through it. But this also reminds me of, you know, we just went to CERN, right? And most of the money at CERN goes to the LHC. That cost $30-something billion, right? Which is about what the U.S. spends in 1 month on blowing people up in, you know, countries with too much sand. We hate sand. Just blow it up. Make it into glass. Anyway, it's kind of ridiculous, but they spend most of their money. Well, then the war is kind of ridiculous. You know, at CERN, they spend most of their money on the LHC. They've got 20 or 30 different interesting projects going on, everything from antimatter containment, which is actually pretty cool. And we actually met up with someone who's happens to be a member of our website, and he watches some of our videos. We met up with him, and he's working on axions. Now, axions, they're a theoretical particle. They're a light particle, but he's looking specifically for solar axions. And he had to go get some all kinds of things. He had to go get magnets and just tons of different things. So he actually ended up borrowing lots of pieces from older particle colliders and just basically piece this thing together. Now, axions, if they were discovered, may not be quite as big as the Higgs boson, but they would be up there because it's a huge piece of the standard model that's missing. I think one of the biggest things would be the dark matter axions, but solar axions are pretty high up there on the list. Finding that would also give further credence to the standard model that we have. It's just that's something that's missing. Anyway, I think it's an interesting parallel there that they're both picking through some of their older stuff because they're not as funded as they should be. And, you know, I think the LHC is romantic because they discover quarks and bosons and things like that. But axions could be really sexy too if the media would cover it. And, you know, if people will get excited about it, maybe they would get some funding. There's a lot of politics that's involved with all this stuff too, of course, you know. What do people care about? What do people want to see? What do the governments know about? Do they know about axions? Does anybody care about that? So, I don't know. I mean, in a perfect world, in a perfect society, I would hope that everything would get funded. It's science, you know. We're spending way too much money fighting. Why can't we spend a lot of money learning? I mean, if we spent a fraction of the money that we spend on fighting, we would have discovered almost everything there is to discover. Maybe, I don't know. I'm probably an idiot for saying that, but you get the idea. Okay, I'm coming off my soapbox now. Yeah, but interesting. So they have broken the speed of light. Yeah. Broken the speed of light in a laboratory. This is pretty ridiculous. So the speed of light, 186. Why are they using miles? I wish all these articles would just start. It makes no sense to me. I thought scientists use meters in Celsius or Kelvin scale, I guess would be the thing. But anyway, 186,000 miles per second in a vacuum is the speed of light. They've been able to exceed that by using cesium. So they shot a laser through cesium, and it was faster than the speed of light. That's kind of interesting. I'm not sure what the implications are here. Yeah. Don't know if this was at CERN or not. This was, was it at CERN? The Anderson Institute is the website that it's on, but I'm not sure if it, where does it say? New Jersey, actually. Princeton, New Jersey. Yeah. Yeah, it's the Anderson Institute. Did I not send you that article? Very interesting. They've broken the speed of light. So the implications, I mean, at first people were like, oh, this invalidates Einstein's theory of relativity, which basically says that things can't go faster than the speed of light. But this is light, so it's not exactly the same as, matter cannot exceed the speed of light, pretty much, if I understand it correctly. I'm not a physicist, and I think it's funny. I did meet a lot of physicists while we were in Switzerland, and they're like, yeah, you're an idiot, but we still like to watch you. And I was like, thanks. Because they were like, just it's nice that you try to talk about physics, but we understand that we couldn't do YouTube videos and you're doing them for us. But hopefully by the time people get to school, they'll realize you're an idiot. And then they'll say, thanks for getting us this far. Or thanks for encouraging us to branch out. So yeah, I was like, cool, man. Thanks for the beer, I guess.
I minored in physics. Does that count for anything?
They had nothing but good things to say about you.
Okay. Well, I guess that's whatever.
Because I think you censor yourself better than I do.
Gain-assisted superluminality, and it's like, I'm going to have to take a look at this, because it's like, whoa, speed of light, what's the catch? Because it's like, every time somebody's like, oh, this is something is faster than the speed of light, it's like the giant pair of scissors in space. You have a giant pair of scissors in space, and the two blades on the scissors are moving past one another. And so the point at which the two blades cross is moving faster than the speed of light. Totally possible, but that doesn't actually convey any information. And so the spooky action at a distance, probably also superluminal, but again, does not really convey information superluminally. And so if this can somehow be translated into conveying information superluminally, then we will have something really amazing. This will be the building blocks for the interplanetary internet. I always figured that it would be some version of like quantum interference or something that we would have interplanetary internet, because the whole spooky action at a distance would be on a planetary scale. But again, you can't actually convey information that way. You still have to have some other piece of information conveyed via classical means in order to do stuff. But they seem to be going out on a limb here, but it's the Anderson Institute, but it's andersoninstitute.com, not .edu, so it's kind of like, I don't know, gonna have to read this and understand it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was done at Princeton, so
well, I mean, Harvard and Princeton anymore are just mouthpieces for Coke and Pepsi. I mean,
oh man, there's some people watching who attend those schools, and whatever they were eating just fell out of their mouth because they're spending that much money.
I'm mostly only kidding, a little bit kidding. Well, more than a little bit. I actually am completely kidding. It's not that bad yet, but it's getting really bad. I mean, have you priced higher education in America? It's almost like we're trying to shoot ourselves in the foot. I think it's the Illuminati's systematic dismantling of the American education system, because they want everybody to be dumb, because then everybody won't mind that everything is very bad. So
I recently met somebody who was majoring in physics at Princeton, as a matter of fact, and I was talking about the spooky action at a distance, and they thought that was what the Slenderman games were based on. Let's think of the games.
And Alone in the Dark, and it's like, it's not.
Alone in the Dark was a very bright game. Have you loaded it up? Have you loaded up Alone in the Dark lately? Alone in the Dark was a very bright game. It's just spooky. I guess they didn't really have very good.
It was completely dark, and that was terrifying.
Well, yeah, it's got to be either all or nothing, because back then the graphics didn't really have very good shaders. It was just like, this is dark and this is light. There you go, deal with it. Anyway, we're talking about games. So this is just something interesting here from the guys over at CD Projekt Red. Just a quick quote, and then we'll move on from CEO Marcin Iwinski. I can't say these names, man. I'm not Polish. I don't know. Anyway, next time I'm over there in Poland, I'm gonna go by and say what's up to these guys. But anyway, this quick quote. He said, where is it? The quote. I'll just paraphrase it because I forgot where it is. But he wants to see DLC, free DLC, to become the norm in the industry and not the exception. They have lots and lots of free DLC. Most of it's small free DLC, and they do have some paid DLC coming out. But I mean, a lot of their free DLC is like different outfits and small weapons and that sort of thing. But you see this all the time with games like Street Fighter and Call of Duty. Oh, you want to wear a blue suit? That'll cost you $3 or $4 or whatever. They nickel and dime you with a lot of the DLC. So they're not doing that, and that's really cool. The DLC that you're going to have to pay for here is going to add around 30 hours of gameplay. And they say that the DLC that you'll be paying for is about the same size as the entire Witcher 2 game. So when they make you pay for DLC, they do a lot of work on it. And to me, it kind of makes sense that way. And then they also, the guys from CD Projekt Red, they're also the same guys behind Good Old Games. And I don't know why I didn't even know this at the same time. I was like, I thought they were just like in the same building or neighbors or something. And then when I met them at Gamescom, I was talking to the guys. I was like, wait a minute, why is there so much Witcher stuff here? Hold on a minute, are you guys the same company? And they're like, yeah, we're basically the same company. And I was like, oh, that makes sense then. So yeah, and it's funny because they're pretty much sister companies, CD Projekt Red and Good Old Games, or GOG as they call it. They don't say Good Old Games anymore. They say GOG. But they still support other platforms other than their own. Kind of interesting. Yeah, any more cool things to talk about? Oh, we forgot to mention the GTX 950 launch. Forgot all about that. Tiny little card there.
Oh, yeah, the GTX 950 launched. It's going to be neat.
Cheap and really good for 1080p is what I've been hearing from everybody. So could be interesting for a kill your console build or something. Maybe. I don't know. And especially by the end of the year, I bet these will be on sale for like $120, $130. That'll be a pretty attractive card unless AMD's stuff goes on crazy sale, but could be pretty damned attractive. And last thing that we should talk about when it comes to gaming.
Really for AMD, because
the
whole rebadge thing, it's like their cost to manufacture hasn't gone down, and the GTX 950 is designed to be inexpensive to manufacture, so it's probably bad news for AMD.
And they need to do something. I don't even know what they're doing right now. They've got the Fury X, that was like a big woo for a little while. Now it's kind of died down to a mumble, and people are still buying them and all that sort of thing. But what else is going on, guys? Come on. What else have we got to work with AMD? DirectX 12. This is, okay, here's something that we actually called a while back. And I mentioned this. I couldn't say it for sure, but I said, listen, when DirectX 12 comes out, I think it's probably going to benefit the AMD cards slightly more than it benefits the Nvidia cards. And then now we have some tests with some of the first games that have come out that support DirectX 12. And this could be just this one game. I'm going to try to play this as safe as possible because, guys, I don't want to be on 8chan anymore. You guys can do whatever you want. I think it's kind of funny when you guys Photoshop me into terrible situations over there on 8chan, because there's nothing better for you to do with your life. It's wonderful. At least you're thinking of me. Anyway, so far the AMDs are gaining more with DirectX 12 than the Nvidia cards are. That's kind of interesting, especially when you look at the scaling for Crossfire and SLI. Scaling is really nice on the AMD cards. So that's promising if you bought an AMD card and then we're like, hey, the Nvidias are faster, man. Well, just chill out for a little bit when some more DirectX 12 games come out. Stories may change, and also remind you that Vulkan is very similar also to DirectX 12 and Mantle, and when that comes out. And if we have good drivers for Linux, that could be good as well. So yeah. That's pretty much it, I think, right? covered everything. Thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring the episode.
PC
and
Perspective has a
yeah, I brought that up here.
PC Perspective has a pretty good article on DirectX 12 and that game, but that game's in beta. It's not out yet, but it did really well because it's like real-time strategy. So there's a gazillion things on screen. So hey, anything that makes StarCraft run better.
Yeah, you know, the DirectX 12 also is going to be better for, I guess, parallel computing and that sort of thing. So DirectX 12 is a huge step forward, but I mean, it really does borrow a lot from Mantle and lower level APIs. So cutting out the overhead is a good thing, man. All right, we did see some pretty interesting. We actually went to a DirectX 12 and the future of APIs like lecture when we were at Gamescom. Actually, it was a Game Developers Conference a day before Gamescom, and we sat down. And about 10 minutes into it, I noticed that Kane was like kind of nodding off a little bit, so I was elbowing him, like, stop, the guy's looking at us. But he got extremely in-depth, and then I realized that everyone else in the room was an engineer, and there were no other press in the room, and I was like, oh. Because he was like up there, he was up there like, had a chalkboard or whatever, or a whiteboard. He was up there like writing code and stuff on the thing, and I was like, oh, damn it. I just wanted to hear, like the fuzzy stuff, and then I was like, this is Game Developers Conference. So, yeah. So it was a little bit over our heads, but still pretty interesting, and yeah, DirectX 12 is a much better API. And Vulkan should be as well.
That event is sort of evolving into a game developers conference as much as it is like, early preview. I guess the internet and Steam Greenlight is replacing the press component, because if somebody puts up an interesting game on Steam, it's going to get the press. It's going to be really popular. Yeah. But if you get a whole bunch of super nerd programmers together for a weekend, that's probably a better use of their time to go over really advanced mathematics and how they're doing clever things to squeeze more horsepower out of stuff. It probably is a better use of time because everybody can get together and share information in a way that's really difficult to do on the internet, whereas actually doing the press thing on the internet is probably a lot easier once you've actually got something to show.
I mean, it really was two different events though, because the couple of days before Gamescom, you did have actual Game Developers Conference, and then the first day of Gamescom is press only. And I mean, you still have people, once the doors open, it's still a madhouse. I can't even believe it. 400
titles and that kind of thing.
Yeah, 400,000 people descend upon Cologne. It was ridiculous. After we walked in, and we're like, let's leave, and we just turned back around. Thankfully, they had a large section for press and business. Like it was like two conventions together. Like, all the same games were also over here, but press only were allowed here. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. Anyway, Kane and I are going to do a little bit of a talk on that. We'll do an episode of Watched pretty soon, just where we talk about some of the gaming stuff and then talk about what it's like to go to a press event in Germany, because some of you guys that are in other parts of the world have no idea. It is very different, like a very, very different experience than going to PAX or E3 or whatever, or even Game Developers Conference here in the States. Totally different experience for a lot of different reasons. So stay tuned for those videos, and yeah, that's pretty much it. We'll see you guys in the comments over on the website.